Welcome to the Missing Dots. Today we're going to talk about something that brings millions of people onto the streets every year, Chilam, or Arbaeen. Most people say it has been happening exactly like this since 61 Hijri. Some say it is completely new, just a local cultural thing, but both sides are incomplete. Today on the Missing Dots, we will dig out the cold, clear, and straight history. From private grief to the biggest walk in the world, no emotion, no taking sides, only facts.
Right, and just to set the stage for you listening right now, we're looking at this strictly through, a historical and sociological lens.
Yeah, exactly.
We aren't getting into the theology or taking any sectarian sides. It's really just about exploring the fascinating history of how a ritual actually grows over 13 centuries.
Yeah, because to really get how we end up with, 25 million people walking together today, we've had to kind of strip all of that modern stuff away, right?
Completely.
We have to look at what physically happened on the ground on that very first 40th day back in 61 Hijri.
Yeah.
Like, what is the actual baseline here?
And that baseline is honestly where we hit a pretty massive historical wall.
Really? How so?
Well, there's this very popular story that the surviving family, the Ahl al-Bayt, that they returned to Karbala from their captivity in Damascus on the exact 40th day after the battle.
Right, which is a really powerful emotional story for a lot of people.
It is, it really is. But when historians apply just basic 7th century travel math to that narrative, it basically becomes a logistical impossibility.
Okay, wait, walk me through the math here. Because we're talking about a caravan of captives, right? Like women, kids, maybe sick or wounded people.
Exactly. So just looking at the physical distances, right? The family was taken from Karbala to Kufa first, which is close by.
Right.
But then they were held there for a bit before being marched all the way across the desert to Damascus in Syria.
And that's, Iraq to Syria and back, that's roughly a 1,500 kilometer round trip, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're in a captive caravan in the 7th century, you don't have paved highways. You're moving at, maybe 25, 30 kilometers a day if you're lucky.
Absolute best, yeah, if you are pushing them really hard. And you have to add in the days they were in prison in Kufa, the actual travel time, the weeks they were kept in the court in Damascus.
Oh, wow. You have to factor in the stopping time.
Right, and then the whole journey back. So when you run those numbers, mathematically, just the travel time alone would take anywhere from 75 to 100 days.
So trying to fit that into 40 days is like, I don't know, trying to walk across a huge modern country in a week. It just doesn't fit.
It really doesn't. And
Yeah.
you know what's really interesting about this?
What's that?
This isn't just some modern secular critique. Like, early classical Islamic scholars were actively debating this and rejecting the 40-day return centuries ago.
Wait, really? The classical scholars were doing the transit math?
Yeah. Prominent early scholars like al-Mufid and later hadith experts like al-Nuri, they used geographical evidence to prove it couldn't have happened on that specific day.
SubhanAllah, that's actually amazing. It shows they had a really strict internal critical system. They weren't just blinding, accepting stories.
Exactly. They were auditing their own history.
But that raises a huge question then. If the family physically couldn't have been there on day 40, why is that specific story such a huge part of the commemoration for you and millions of others today?
Well, to figure that out, we have to look at who actually was there on that day, because we do have a verified historical anchor.
Okay, who was it?
It was a man named Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. He was a very prominent elderly companion of the Prophet.
Okay.
He traveled from Medina, he bathed in the Euphrates River, and he visited the grave.
So it was just one older guy, like by himself?
Yeah, just him. It was a completely private, quiet, solitary visit.
Wow. From that to 25 million people.
Right. But over the generations, the oral tradition went through this psychological thing called structural memory collapse.
Structural memory collapse.
Yeah.
That sounds intense. What does that mean here?
It basically happens when a community's memory tries to make a story more efficient, more emotional.
Ah, I see.
So the actual verified visit of Jabir on the 40th day kind of merged in the public mind with the family's eventual return, which happened much, much later.
So they just compressed the timeline.
Exactly. They squeezed these two separate events into one unified timeline because it just gave a much stronger, emotionally satisfying story of closure.
Yeah, that makes total psychological sense. Like, if you think about any family history or national myth, you always condense the timeline to get straight to the emotional truth of the story.
Exactly.
So, okay, the very first observance was just Jabir. But what about the immediate descendants, like the actual imams in the decades after that? How do they observe it?
So if you look at the era of the early imams, like Imam Jafar al-Sadiq, their observance looked absolutely nothing like what you see on the streets today.
So no massive parades, no banners.
None of that. No street walking crowds, no public theater. It was an intensely private practice, mostly household devotion and fasting.
Quiet grief in the living room, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. And it was anchored by a specific text, a theological prayer known as the Ziyarat al-Arbaeen.
Okay, so a written prayer.
Yeah, and actually, Imam al-Askari later said that reciting this specific text was one of the 5 signs of a true believer.
Wow. What's actually in the text, though? Is it just like a play-by-play of the battle?
No, and that's the fascinating part. It's actually a theological diagnosis of society. It explicitly says that Hussein gave his life to rescue humanity from, and I'm quoting here, the bewilderment of misguidance and moral ignorance.
So it frames the whole sacrifice as a deliberate moral rescue mission,
Yeah.
not just a tragedy. But wait, I have to ask. If the original instructions from the imams were just to quietly read a text at home, where did all the massive street marching come from?
Right.
Like, why didn't the imams just tell people to go out and protest in the streets?
Well, you have to look at the brutal political reality of the 7th and 8th centuries. We have to talk about taqiyya.
Taqiyya, meaning caution or hiding your beliefs to survive.
Exactly. Remember, the imams were living under this intense, paranoid military surveillance from the Umayyad and early Abbasid empires.
Right, they were basically dissidents in a police state.
Totally. So any public display of mourning for the Prophet's family was seen by the government as an open political rebellion.
Oh, wow. So it was literally a death sentence?
Yes, exactly. The quietness wasn't just a religious preference for whispering, it was literally a survival strategy.
Yeah, if they did it in the streets, their entire community would have been wiped out.
Exactly. They kept the memory alive behind closed doors so they could survive.
That makes so much sense. It completely reframes the quietness. But obviously they aren't still underground today, so how does it go from a secret prayer in a locked house to a massive public street event?
Well, that shift wasn't because of some new religious rule. It was actually driven by massive geopolitical shifts. We have to fast forward to the 4th century Hijri, so around 963 CE.
Okay, where are we at this point?
We're in Baghdad.
Wait, Baghdad. But that was the capital of the Sunni Abbasid Caliphate.
Oh.
How is there public Shia mourning happening there?
Because by that time, the Abbasid caliphs were basically just figureheads. Real state power had been taken over by a Persian military dynasty called the Buyids.
Oh, interesting.
And the Buyids were very sympathetic to Shia Islam. So the Buyid vizier decided to use the state's power to finally pull this mourning ritual out of the shadows.
So he takes this marginalized underground thing and gives it like official government sponsorship.
Exactly. He formalized protected public mourning. He ordered markets to close, people to wear black, and processions to happen right in the streets of Baghdad.
I mean, imagine the psychological shift for the people. For hundreds of years, you've been doing this in secret, terrified of being killed. And suddenly the military is protecting your right to mourn openly.
Right. It's a complete 180.
It's like an underground resistance movement suddenly taking over City Hall. The public footprint has just permanently changed.
And once that door to state sponsorship opens, it just scales up massively. A few centuries later, you see this weaponized as full-blown imperial identity by the Safavid and Qajar dynasties in Iran.
Wait, weaponized? How so?
Well, when the Safavids made Shiism their state religion, they were bordered by their massive rival, the Sunni Ottoman Empire.
Right, huge geopolitical rivalry there.
Exactly. So the Safavids needed to build a really distinct, fiercely loyal imperial identity to stand apart. So they basically institutionalized the mourning cycle.
Like building infrastructure for it?
Huge infrastructure, royal mourning arenas, massive rest stops along the pilgrimage routes. It became a highly choreographed pillar of the Persian Empire.
It's just wild to see how the ritual adapts to its container.
Like,
it survives as a whisper when it's hunted, but when an empire backs it, it becomes this monumental civic pageant.
yeah, and it didn't just adapt politically, it adapted geographically too. As the state-sponsored ritual spread, it really blended with the local cultures of the people practicing it.
I mean, you can see that today, right?
Yeah.
If you look at how it's commemorated in the Arab world versus how it looks in South Asia, they look like totally different events.
Completely different. In the Arab tradition, especially in Iraq, the whole focus is the mashi.
The walk?
The walk, exactly. The physical, grueling, long-distance journey on foot to the actual physical shrine of Husayn in Karbala.
Right, you want to physically put yourself at the center of the tragedy.
Yeah.
But what about South Asia?
So in South Asia, India and Pakistan, they usually call it Chelam. And this tradition got a lot of support from the Awadh Nawabs and the Deccan Sultanates. But they had a huge logistical problem.
What was the problem?
Places like Lucknow or Hyderabad are like 4,000 kilometers away from Iraq.
Oh, yeah, if you're 4,000 kilometers away in the 17th century, you're not walking to the physical shrine. It's just impossible for a regular person.
Exactly. So what did they do? If you can't walk to the shrine, you bring the shrine to your neighborhood.
Oh, that is a brilliant workaround.
It really is. They blended Persian mourning poetry with local Hindu processional customs. They built these incredible, towering replica tombs called tadziyah and big banners called alam.
So instead of walking across a desert, they paraded the replicas through their own streets.
Yeah, and they even buried them in local grounds that they literally named Karbalas.
That's a total inversion.
Yeah.
The Arab model moves the people to the center, and the subcontinental model brings the center to the people.
Exactly.
But this brings up a really interesting tension. You've got all these local cultural additions, the banners, the replicas, the street theater. How do modern religious authorities view this? Could they just allow whatever local culture wants to add?
So this gets into how classical Islamic law handles culture. There's a concept called urf, which basically means custom.
Custom.
Generally, religious scholars allow and even encourage local cultural expressions of grief as long as they don't violate the core tenets of the faith.
So building a replica tomb out of wood in India is totally fine under urf.
Right, exactly. It's seen as a culturally authentic way to express a permitted emotion. But, and this is a big, but it isn't a free-for-all.
Okay, so where is the line drawn? When did the scholar step in and say, nope, you've gone too far?
They step in when those cultural additions cross into actual harm. The most famous example is tatbir.
Which is what exactly?
It's the practice of self-flagellation using blades to draw blood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it actually originated from specific tribal military customs centuries later.
Yeah.
It has absolutely no roots in the practices of the early imams.
So how do senior jurists handle that today?
The overwhelming majority of senior modern jurists strictly forbid it. They rule it as explicitly haram, impermissible.
Because of the self-harm.
Yes, firstly because of the strict Islamic rule against intentional, useless self-harm. But secondly, they argue that bloody displays fundamentally damage the public image of the faith.
Right, it distracts from the actual intellectual and moral message of that original Ziyarat text we were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
That is such a key point for you listening to grasp. The core narrative survives by embracing local culture, but the jurisprudential immune system rejects things that threaten the actual theology.
That's a great way to put it.
So, okay, we've gone from Jabir's quiet prayer to the Bayt state decrees to the Safavid empires to the cultural blending in South Asia. But that brings us to the modern era where this thing just completely explodes.
It really does. We step into the 21st century, and what we see today is this wild mix of modern geopolitics, technology, and ancient devotion.
Because for a long time, the Arbaeen walk in Iraq was basically shut down, right?
Yeah, under Saddam Hussein's regime, the walking pilgrimage was brutally restricted, often totally banned.
Why banned? Just control.
Well, the regime knew that millions of people gathering around a story of resisting tyranny was a huge threat to a dictatorship.
Right, obviously.
So pilgrims who tried to sneak through the palm groves to walk were hunted down, imprisoned, or killed.
Subhanallah. So once again, the state forces the devotion underground, just like back in the 7th century. But then 2003 happens.
The regime falls, and the second that violent lid is taken off, all of that pent-up multi-generational energy just erupts.
It went from totally banned to a global phenomenon overnight.
Almost instantly, yeah.
And the scale today is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. We're talking 15 to 25 million people walking the 80-kilometer route from Najaf to Karbala.
It's massive.
Like, just think about the logistics. You're peacefully moving, housing, and feeding the population of a small country like Australia over a single weekend on one stretch of highway. How do they even eat? How does the infrastructure not just instantly collapse?
It doesn't collapse because of this incredible socioeconomic engine called the Maqib system.
Maqib? What is that, like a government relief tent?
Not at all. It is entirely citizen-driven. A Maqib is basically a volunteer-funded local hospitality station, and there are thousands of them lining the whole 80-kilometer route.
Thousands of them. Who runs them?
Local tribes, neighborhoods, families, even international diaspora groups.
And they just, what, hand out water bottles?
Oh, no, they provide absolutely everything, completely free of charge.
Wait, really?
Millions of hot meals cooked right on the side of the road, massive tents with beds for sleeping, free medical clinics, phone charging stations. I mean, there are even volunteers giving foot massages to the walkers.
SubhanAllah, that is unbelievable. Who pays for all of this?
It's entirely crowdsourced. People save up their money all year just to spend it serving the pilgrims for these few days. It basically defies all normal rules of economics.
It's a logistical miracle fueled entirely by volunteers. So, zooming out a bit, when you look at these millions of people walking, eating, and mourning together, what is the actual sociological function of this today?
Well, sociologically, it operates as this really powerful hybrid. First, on a human level, it's a massive communal trauma processing ritual.
Trauma processing.
Yeah, psychologists will tell you that isolated trauma is destructive. But trauma processed inside a bounded, predictable, supportive communal ritual is incredibly healing.
That makes total sense. You aren't carrying the grief by yourself. You look left and right, and 20 million people are carrying it with you.
Exactly. And secondly, it's a massive generator of social capital. The Maqib system forces different social classes, tribes, and nationalities to interact and serve each other.
It builds trust outside the government.
Yes. And the third function is that it acts as a perpetual political protest.
Against tyranny.
Right. The core DNA of Karbala is the refusal to submit to injustice. By physically walking that route every year, they're renewing a moral pledge. It's a ritual that violently refuses to be put in the past tense.
It keeps the memory dangerously alive. This has just been an incredible history to walk through today. We started out asking, is the Arbaeen walk today a perfect replica of the 7th century, or is it a modern invention?
And the history shows that the truth is just so much more dynamic than either of those.
It's a living, breathing evolution. I mean, it starts with the verified history of Jabir's quiet prayer by a river. It survives as a whispered text under a police state. It moves to the public square through the politics of medieval Baghdad and Iran.
And then it creatively blends with local cultures in South Asia to cover thousands of kilometers.
Exactly. And finally, supercharged by the fall of a modern dictatorship, it evolves into this 25 million person volunteer-led logistical marvel.
It's really a masterclass in how historical memory works. A moral message, like standing against injustice, only survives from millennia if it adapts to its environment, while still holding fiercely to its foundations and rejecting harmful extremes.
Yeah, understanding this shows you that history is never just a static painting on a wall. It's a toolkit that every generation adapts to survive. Yeah. And that leaves you with a really wild final thought to mull over.
Ooh, what's that?
Well, if a private 7th century prayer could evolve through medieval empires and South Asian courts to eventually become this massive 25 million person physical walk today, what happens next? Inshallah, how might future technologies like global digital networks, augmented reality, or even full virtual reality completely transform how the next generation experiences the Arbaeen walk in the 22nd century?
Yeah, that's something to think about.
To rebuild your mental peace and legacy today, give charity, sponsor a student, and plant a tree. May Allah grant us success. Don't forget to rock. Come on, let's go. Don't forget to follow this channel, The Missing Dots. Thank you.